I would like to begin the session by requesting Justice Shahram to deliver the keynote address. Justice Shahram, please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Distinguished members of the bar, respected scholars, representative of civil society, dear colleague and friends, I'm grateful to the organizers of annual Asma Jahangir conference for inviting me to participate in this important panel. It's a privilege to speak at a forum that bears the name of Asma Jahangir, an advocate whose life's work remind us the constitutionalism, pluralism, and human dignity, and are not abstract ideals, but lived commitments that must be defended with courage and consistency. It is impossible to begin without paying tribute to late Asma Jahangir, whose name has become inseparable from the struggle of democracy, human rights, and judicial independence in Pakistan. Asma was not merely a great lawyer, she was a moral force. She understood, perhaps better than most, that law is not neutral when injustice prevails. Her advocacy, whether for political prisoners, religious minorities, women, or those condemned to death, was grounded in an unwavering belief in human dignity and constitutional supremacy. She challenged dictators, confronted abuse of power, and spoke uncomfortable truths in times when silence was rewarded and dissent punished. Yet, she did not as an ideologue, but as a constitutionalist. Her loyalty was never to a government, a party, or a personality. It was to the Constitution and to the idea that every human life has worth. Now, these were all my written views about Asma. I can speak and hours about Asma as we were together, as we started our bar politics together, as we started contesting elections together. She was elected president in 2011 of Supreme Court Bar Association. Then she supported our friend Mr. Yasin Azad from Sindh. And then she not only supported me, rather she not only persuaded, rather compelled me to contest the election of Lahore High Court Bar. And I did it, and I became the president. Mr. Yasin and myself were together. He was the president of Supreme Court Bar Association, and I was the president of Lahore High Court Bar Association. And we cannot explain the time, both of us, I can speaking even on his behalf. I can speak on his behalf. I am authorized, he has authorized me, that we cannot forget the moments we spent with Asma. She was larger. Seriously, I have no reservation. She was larger than life. She was full of qualities. So let's come back to the topic, because I can speak, an hours for Asma. The theme, therefore, before us today, the politicization of religion and its impact on minorities. It's complex, sensitive, and deeply consequential. It touches upon questions of identity, power, law, and justice. Well, as a serving judge, I approached this subject with restraint, mindful of institutional boundaries, yet conscious of the judiciary's responsibility to engage thoughtfully with issues that affect the constitutional order and the lived realities of citizens. And the religion occupies a central place in the moral and social life of our society. The Constitution of Pakistan recognizes this reality At the same time, it establishes a constitutional order founded on rule of law, equity, and fundamental rights. Our constitutional history reflects an ongoing effort to reconcile faith with governance, from the objective resolution to its incorporation into the substantive text of Constitution. Religion has been acknowledged as source of values, yet the Constitution simultaneously affirms the sovereignty. That sovereignty is exercised through its institutions, not through coercion, exclusion, or political mobilization against vulnerable groups. The politicization of religion begins when religious identity is transformed from a source of personal belief into a tool of political legitimacy or contestation, when it's invoked not to inspire ethical conduct but to define who belongs and who does not. When religions become politicized, its impact on religious minorities is often immediate and tangible. Minorities may experience social exclusion or stigmatization, barriers to equal participation in public life, disproportionate vulnerability to accusations, violence, or legal misuse, erosion of confidence in law enforcement and justice delivery. From a judicial perspective, such impacts raise serious constitutional concerns. The rule of law requires that law be applied without fear, favor, and prejudice. Where identity becomes a proxy for guilt or suspicion, due process is compromised. Courts are frequently called upon to examine whether state action or inaction has failed to protect minority citizens from harm. In doing so, the judiciary must navigate difficult terrain, respecting religious sensitivities while enforcing constitutional guarantees with firmness and neutrality. Asma Jahangir understood, perhaps more clearly than most, that minority rights are not peripheral concern. They are a test of constitutional sincerity. She consistently argued that the strength of a legal system is measured not by how it treats the majority, but how it protects the vulnerable. Her advocacy for religious minorities was grounded in constitutional text, international human rights norms, and a deep belief in equal citizenship. She reminded us often uncomfortably that silence in the face of injustice is itself a form of complicity. Yet, she also believed in institutions. She engaged courts, invoked law, and insisted that constitutional remedies matter. Her legacies challenge the legal community to defend minority rights not as a charity, but as a constitutional duty. The responsibility of safeguarding minority rights does not rest with the judge alone. The bar plays a critical role, or often the first line of defense, for those who feel excluded or threatened. Ethical advocacy, competent representation, and respect for professional standards are essential to maintaining public confidence in justice. To young lawyers and law students, I offer this reflection. The defense of minority rights is not a niche practice. It is central to constitutional law. It requires patience, preparation, and moral clarity. Advocacy grounded in law, not outrage, strengthens institutions. Advocacy that respects the dignity of all parties strengthens democracy. Ultimately, the challenge of politicized religion cannot be addressed solely through litigation or legislation. It requires a constitutional ethos, a shared commitment among institutions and citizens to the principles of equality, tolerance, and the lawful governance. Such an ethos does not demand uniformity of belief, it demands respect for difference, confidence in law, and rejection of violence, and exclusion as tools of persuasion. The Constitution provides the framework. It is for institutions, including courts, the bar, the executive, the civil society, to give the framework life. Distinguished participants, the question before us is not whether religion has a place in society. It undeniably does. The question is whether law will remain the common language through which we manage difference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice Saab.